All right, folks, welcome back. So much happiness in our. I love our intro. So much laughing, good times. Glad to be back. We have Connor Onion joining us again. Before we get to Connor, just a quick shout out to our friends at Home Field Apparel. Check them out. Not only do they have their football boxes, they are. You can shop them online, homefieldapparel.com. If you're in Bloomington, go on Kirkwood where Tracks used to be, or they're in that track spot. They're opening their first retail location. So check them out. All the stuff's going to be there. Use the promo code HOME23. Well, that's on the website. Go in person. See what happens. Just go to the desk. Be like, hey, HOME23. I listen on Crimson Cast. I want some free stuff. And you'll get some money off. And Connor, if you're watching this on video, Connor is repping the home field jacket. It looks great, man.
Hey, thank you. No, I thought I would break it out for the first time on this show since you and the people at Home Field were so nice to hook me up last year after being a guest.
It's got the Purdue colors. That's the problem we got going on.
You know, I figured that would come up. I selected the neutral option on the website when you sent me the link last year.
Right.
And I did realize it is a little Purdue-ish, but this was, you're meant to be a neutral thing.
Rep a team. You can't really pick a team. You got to be like big. You should go like they need like a blue and white option, honestly.
Right. Yeah. Get like Big Ten Network / Fox colors in there.
Yeah. Although I will say the new home field jacket as part of the Indiana box, they have an Indiana. I believe it's a bomber jacket, but it has the old oval logo and it has the old Big Ten with the 11 like in between the letters logo, which I've always loved that Big Ten logo.
That's good. I might just have to go 18 different jackets. I'll get 18 bomber jackets, and then I can wear one on site wherever I am in the Big Ten.
I mean, I think the other Connor with Home Field would absolutely love that if you were repping the bomber jacket on air. That would be good for him. But let's wait. Let me help negotiate this because I want to get my beak wet on this. I don't want you just hooking them up. Like we gotta work something out for me.
No. You guys were very kind to hook me up. I'm not expecting any more gear. Don't worry, Connor. If you're listening, thank you again for the very nice jacket.
No, it's great stuff. I love it. I have the Home Field. I have a bunch of Home Field stuff, and it's seriously one of the best sweatshirts I've ever bought in my life. So, well, Connor, we're happy to have you back on to talk a little IU football, Big Ten football preview. It's exciting stuff, man. Indiana had the run last year. I think last time we talked, we were getting ready for the Indiana Notre Dame game, which, didn't go as we wanted, but the offseason went really well. I mean, I'm going to start there. I've been saying this all year that, what makes me excited about this year is having Fernando Mendoza as quarterback. And, he played an RPO style. But the thing that I keep going back to is, and just an absolute warrior, is that Curtis Rourke last year came out since we last talked that he played all season on a torn ACL, which I'm not sure how that's possible. The guy is a warrior, but I've just looked at it and said, for as good as Cignetti was last year, you had to assume, I just assumed there has to be like a part of the playbook and moments during the game where it's like, man, I really wish I could call this, but I can't because my quarterback has a torn ACL, so we're going to have to do something different. I wonder how much more of the playbook we're going to see because you have a quarterback who's 100% healthy.
Mm-hmm. I'm 100% with you. I'm so excited to see him play at Indiana, and the running part of his game, but also the ability to protect himself part of his game is something that obviously is going to be worth watching. He did take some shots last year. He wasn't afraid to put his shoulder pads down. I was watching some of his tape from their Miami game last year, and there was, it's been all over our rules calls in the offseason when, Mike Pereira and Dean Blandino send us stuff, a targeting, non-targeting, was it targeting type deal,
right?
Where he's not sliding. And, it ended up being a play where, they review it for targeting, but he's pretty fearless when he tucks the ball down and runs. I do hope there is a little more sliding in his game for the sake of Indiana fans, but what a great gift, what a great Christmas gift. Because I think it was right after we talked last year. It was Christmas Eve when the Hoosiers pulled him out of the portal. So that was a great start to the offseason to get things rolling, and what I think is going to be another year where Indiana contends.
I agree. I mean, you look at they bring back a lot of players on defense. You bring back Elijah Surratt. And Omar Cooper Jr. is coming back. Like, there's a lot of receivers there for Mendoza to play with. And then, for the first time in years, there's, Mendoza is already getting a little bit of buzz as a possible NFL draft pick. Like, there's early next year, the NFL early draft boards have him as a possible first rounder. Like, IU is in territory we've never been before. But I just look at the offense, and I think there's a lot of weapons, and especially with the way that Cignetti runs a system where it kind of is, it's not reliant on a single player. It's kind of a scheme, and people get plugged in and out. It feels like we could be in for another really good year in Bloomington.
Well, you think about the rest of the league too, and I get Mendoza as a new quarterback, but he is more proven than a lot of the quarterbacks that are stepping into jobs. Big prospects all around the league. Dante Moore, big time recruit at Oregon, first at UCLA, then at Oregon. Julian Sayin, who was just announced today, is officially the starter. I think we could assume that he was going to be the starter at Ohio State, but 5-star, yes, but unproven. Drew Aller, probably the other name with Mendoza that are, proven guys at a contending school. Luke Altmaier belongs in that category too at Illinois, but around the rest of the league, Iowa is relying on Mark Gronowski, who I think is going to have a good year. But Sayin's young, Moore is young. USC is, they've moved on from Miller Moss. We'll see how that goes. UCLA, Nico Iamaleava, another big time portal haul. But I think Mendoza's right in that same category as far as offseason gets out of the portal, up there with Iamaleava for UCLA.
Yeah, no, it's Cignetti is really turned it around. And I'll ask you this: you're a member of the media. As an Indiana fan, it's like after Big Ten Media Day, we're all kind of like, man, Curt did it again. It's like everyone's talking about Cignetti, everyone's talking about Indiana. I'll ask it this way: like, how much fun is he to cover? Because a couple like Ryan Day came out, I think Bielema also, like, they all said similar things about the non-conference scheduling and the SEC and kind of how it relates to the Big Ten and the extra Big Ten conference game. They were all saying similar vibes, but like the way Cignetti said it was just such a soundbite, such a dig at the SEC. He's got to be a joy to cover just because he provides sound bites and kind of gives you something to work with as a member of the media.
Yeah, it's always creative, which I appreciate. And like you said, the sentiment was very aligned with the rest of the conference. And I can't really remember a topic or a media day since covering college football where the coaches seem to be so aligned on one thing. But even with that,
do you think that's coming from like high level Big Ten? Like they're all being kind of pushed to go that way?
I'm sure that was discussed in coaches meetings, and it was let's band together and for the good of the league, for the good of all of us in the room, let's make that the sentiment at media day. But I'd love that Curt Cignetti, not that he swayed from that a little bit or varied from that a little bit, but he at least put his own twist on it. And it does make it more fun as a media member to cover people that are quotable, which he has been since literally the first words that he spoke when he was introduced.
Yeah. Well, and it also leads to, this is obviously I'm on his side. I understand it. It's something we've talked about on this podcast a lot, that, Indiana historically has been the problem that they've had for a long time is just overscheduling their non-conference. You go back and look, there's all of these years that are littered with, 5 and 7 seasons where you're playing a really brutal non-conference schedule for a team like Indiana. You're playing, North Carolina or Missouri or North Carolina State. It's like, why are you doing that? Like, just give yourself some wins and get yourself to a bowl. And now that we're doing that, again, it feels like we're drawing the ire of everyone in college football. But as I look at it, as like the goal here is to, make the college football playoff if you can. And the way to do that when you have 9 conference games is to, not schedule really tough opponents. I also think where the calculus has changed is, being an Indiana football fan for years, part of the reason you would bring some of those teams in, I think the thought process was like, well, at least we get a couple more fans in the stadium if, you're bringing in North Carolina or Virginia, at least a name that somebody's heard. our first game against Old Dominion is going to be sold out. And I do think that changes the calculus for the university. It's like, well, if we can sell out Old Dominion, if we can sell out like those types of teams, why play Virginia? Like there's no, like they don't bring anything extra. If we're going to sell out, we might as well make the money and get a win and then give ourselves a 3-0 start to start the season.
Logically, I'm totally with you. And was it last year, maybe 2 years ago, that Indiana bought out of the Louisville game?
Correct.
They were supposed to play Louisville again after playing them at Lucas Oil a few years ago. And at the time, it was like, man, this makes a lot of sense. It's, Louisville to Bloomington. It's a quick trip, one that fans can get into. And at the time, I didn't love it. But then, seeing how Indiana had their season play out last year, and with all the new guys, having 3 games early in the year that you should win is the best thing for them. And I get it as a college football fan, just as a pure college football fan. I want to see the best teams play the best teams, but logically for Indiana to jumpstart their season, it makes all the sense in the world. And as you mentioned, financially, there's there is an incentive to play a Texas or go out and play another Power 4 team. But if you're selling out the stadium, why not start the way that they're starting?
Yeah. And I mean, as a fan, I agree with you too. Like it'd be fun to play Louisville. Those series are fun. The one that's going to be interesting that we've talked a little bit about is Notre Dame, because it's on Indiana's schedule, I think in like 2030 and then 2032 or 31, 32. And of course it's like 2 at Notre Dame, 1 in Bloomington. And I would love to play them again. I think that's an interesting, wouldn't say rivalry because we haven't played them a ton, but that'd be a cool series to get going. But I also there's just a lot of macro trends going on here. And we've talked about it on this pod. It's like Notre Dame's in kind of this spot where they get to cherry pick a Big Ten schedule, but not have a Big Ten schedule. And I do wonder if that series doesn't happen because of like we were talking about, it's kind of an edict from the Big Ten of like, hey, Notre Dame, either get in or get out. And, if I'm the Big Ten, it's like, I would tell all the Big Ten teams, stop scheduling Notre Dame. Just stop letting them pick how they want to do it. Because if the Big Ten and the SEC stop scheduling Notre Dame, hard stop, Notre Dame's going to have a really hard time putting together a schedule that's going to get them, enough of a strength of schedule to get to the playoffs.
Absolutely. I think that'll play out over the next 4 or 5 years here as TV rights come up again. But I mean, Notre Dame doesn't want to give up the big slice of the pie they're getting from NBC. So they're understandably, they're going to fight it as hard as they can. But yeah, as far as the rest of the league saying, no, we're not going to schedule Notre Dame. I don't know. I mean, like we talked about with Media Day, the league was so aligned on the playoff stuff and the 9 versus 8 game scheduling at the SEC. It's not out of the question. Like I could see the league coming together and saying, yeah, we're going to schedule this way and be that specific with it. But I don't think we're there yet.
I agree, but I also, and we can get off this in a sec, but I also look at if this Big Ten SEC kind of crossover game happens, which I think that would be really cool. And I think that's a reality. It's like, then it becomes like, all right, if you're a Big Ten team, if you have 9 Big Ten games and then you have an SEC crossover, it's like, I don't want to also add Notre Dame to that schedule. I don't think any Big Ten team wants. Now it's like, okay, everyone gets 2 cupcakes and then now we're playing a real schedule. So there's things that are happening that I think could push Notre Dame in a tough spot too.
Yeah. Well, for Indiana specifically this year, it's like you go to Eugene and you go to Happy Valley. You play Oregon and Penn State on the road. You play at Iowa. Those 9 games are going to be really challenging, not to mention Illinois to start the Big Ten. So
let's talk about that Illinois game, because that leads into Indiana really should be 3-0. I'm not giving my predictions yet, but it's if we're not 3-0 going into that game, things are really off the rails. That's going to be a really interesting game because Illinois, I think they have Duke on their schedule, but they probably will come out clean. That's going to be 2 teams. I think, the first rankings, Illinois is 13th, we're 19th or somewhere in those ranges. I'm curious your thoughts on that game, because Illinois is kind of getting the, this year's Indiana, which, by the way, just got to say, there is no this year's Indiana. Like, Indiana was so far down, and like people are talking about, is Illinois? It's like Illinois went to the whatever, like the Peach Bowl in like 2000, or they went to a BCS bowl in the early 2000s. Like, Indiana is just in a different realm of bad, and we're coming off of a 3-win season, a 2-win season. Like, this would be like, even Vanderbilt isn't Indiana because they beat Alabama last year. Like, I don't think there's an analogy to Indiana this year. Anyway,
right? Yeah, Illinois had the 07 Rose Bowl with Juice Williams and those guys.
So that's but I look at that game. I think we're going to learn a lot about both of those teams. I'm curious your thoughts on that. I think Indiana stacks up really well. I think it's a great early matchup. I think Galen and I went back and looked at this. I think this is going to be the highest ranking of two teams ever to play in Memorial Stadium, because obviously Indiana's played high-ranked teams in Memorial Stadium, but they've also never been ranked in the top 20 as well to be on that side of the coin. It's going to be an electric atmosphere, but I'm curious how you look at that early matchup and how it's going to kind of sway the season for either team.
Yeah, with some of those preseason narratives you talked about, it really is a made-for-TV type event. I think of the NCAA tournament and how those games get scheduled, and it's always a former coach plays his former team, and there's always that narrative that gets set up by the committee. But with that game in particular, I do think it will have kind of a feel of an early season elimination game. And that's not to say that you can't lose that game and then still go to the playoff, but just with what's ahead for those teams, that's one that's obviously it's the first Big Ten game, so it always sets the tone. But especially with Indiana coming off the season, they have Illinois. They haven't had back-to-back big seasons in a while, so the narrative is kind of at a parallel of you have these starving fan bases for sustained success. Indiana had the 2020 season where, they won the 6 games. They were right there for a chance to play in the Big Ten championship game. Illinois beat South Carolina in their bowl game last year. And now can they turn that into back-to-back years of good years? So I can't wait for that game. I don't know how much buzz that's getting nationally, because everybody seems to be talking about Texas, Ohio State, or some of those early non-conference games. But I think as we get a little bit deeper into September, that's going to be a game where people are like, "Oh yeah, I better watch that game, because this is going to set the course for the rest of the playoff talk."
No, I agree, and I like the idea of framing it as a kind of an elimination game, because it is. I think for Indiana, it definitely is. I think for Illinois, their schedule is a little bit softer. I mean, they still have to play Ohio State at home. They're at Washington, at Wisconsin. They have USC at home. But you look at Indiana's schedule, as obviously everyone on this podcast has, but it's like, if they lose that, their next 2 games are at Iowa and at Eugene. That's a tough bounce back. And then you still have a game at Penn State looming. If you lose that game to Illinois, you're probably out of the Big Ten title race and out of the college football playoff race, unless you're going to win at Oregon and at Penn State.
Yeah. I think even if you win one of those games, maybe you'll find your way back into the conversation, because you lose against Illinois and say you lose at Oregon, but then win at Penn State.
Right.
You're at 2 losses and you have a win at Penn State. So not, I think it's a little bit of a stretch to say it's a true elimination game. Obviously it's game 4 of the season, but I think you can count on, if Indiana does lose at Oregon, at Penn State, there is still a chance to be in that conversation, but you got to win that Illinois game.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing here is, compared to last season, and you can just play, all you can play is a schedule ahead of you. And that was part of what Indiana had, is a lot of the teams last year, like Michigan, Washington, were just not quite, or even Nebraska. Although Nebraska, like, suddenly they were good until we beat them, and suddenly they weren't good. Like, in the media's mind, not you, but like the national media, it's like, well, Nebraska sucks. It's like, well, they were 6-0 when we played them. Like, remember, they were good, and then they weren't. And similarly to Michigan, it's like they sucked until they beat Ohio State, and it's like, oh yeah, well, they sucked against Indiana.
Nebraska almost beat Ohio State.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah. But there weren't a lot of ranked teams on there, and we definitely played the underside of the Big Ten, just the way things laid out. And it's like, we had one chance. It was at Ohio State. which I continually say, like, I'm not sure why that's the bar of like, well, Indiana had to beat Ohio State to prove something. It's like nobody does that in the Big Ten. Like Michigan did it last year. Like that was the first win in 10 years at the Horseshoe in a Big Ten game, I think. But this year you do have, you have the game against Illinois at home. That's nice. You have a game at Iowa where that's not an easy place to play, but Iowa's not as, at least right now, doesn't look to be like, a top 10 team like they've been in the past. And then you have the two games of, Eugene, Oregon and Penn State. Like there's a lot of opportunities for Indiana to test this medal. On the flip side, there's a lot of opportunities where they could lose 4 or 5 games because it's a much tougher schedule than last year. I'm curious, how would you see it going in some of those pivotal games?
I remember we did this last summer, Scott. We went through the schedule probably about this day last year, and we were both kind of going like, there's probably a win. Maybe there's a win. This could be 7-0. This could be 8-0. I don't know. You win that coin flip game, you're at 9-0, 10-0. So we played that game and it played out last year.
Yep.
I do think it is a little more challenging to do that this season with I right now, if you pinned me down, that Illinois Indiana game, I think is a 50-50 split. I don't know if Vegas agrees with me. Vegas always knows, but those first 3 games you're going to find out. Those first 3 games in conference are going to find out a ton. I think the home stretch with Michigan State and UCLA and then Maryland on the road is it's a little bit easier, obviously, but Aiden Childs is back at Michigan State, so I don't think that's a gimme. I don't know, 3-1 coming out of that stretch, the first 4 of the year. I think you're feeling pretty good because I think Indiana will be better than Purdue again. I know you made fun of me for this Purdue-looking jacket, but that's one at the end of the year I think is in the bank. Where will Wisconsin be at the end of the season after their brutal schedule? Plus that game's at home for Indiana. I think that's going to be really interesting because Wisconsin has the Alabama game in non-conference. Their October is ridiculous. Basically playing all the top teams in the league. And then they get Indiana in November. So come out of that first 4 Big Ten game stretch at 4-1. I think we're talking about the Hoosiers again as being a playoff team.
I would agree. No, I would take that right now because that means you've beaten. I mean, that would be losing at Oregon. That means you won at Iowa. You beat Illinois. That's a really good stretch. The thing that I'm already pre-annoyed about is, man, I look at this and similar to last year at this time, I was seeing the path to 10-0. It was like, I'm not sure we can get there because like I do look at our schedule this year and like I think going 8-0 at home is a reality. I think that's something that maybe I'll talk about it more as we get into previews. Like that kind of, we talk about expectations. Like I think we're at a level as a program. It's like, all right, that should be a goal. It's like, can you protect Memorial Stadium? And I think the way things go, you could. And then it's like, can you pick up a couple games on the road? Iowa, Oregon, Penn State, those are tough. What I'm already pre-annoyed at, like I was last year, is there's a world where Indiana could lose at Oregon, lose at Penn State, win everything else. And I think the national narrative would be, well, they're not up to snuff. And like, maybe that isn't good enough to get to the college football playoff. But I would say, like, again, not everybody wins at Oregon. Those are both top 10 teams. Those are road games. And I look no further than Penn State. Like, Penn State also doesn't beat top 10 teams. Like, nobody is talking about Penn State being a fraud or not deserving to be there. It's like, oh, they're awesome. They're there. It's like if we lose to Oregon and we lose to Penn State, we're Penn State. Like, there's no different there. We're a really good team that beats up everybody else and can't beat the top level teams in our second year of trying this. Like, but I just know that Indiana would get vilified by the national media and just get eviscerated where Penn State wouldn't. And I think that's just the old boys club of college football. But I'm like, I'm already pre-annoyed at that, but also 10-2 would be a great year. So like, I'm not that annoyed. I'm not that annoyed.
Well, take the logos away. Ohio State lost at Oregon last year.
Right.
And then they lost at home against Michigan. I'm not huge into better losses and comparing them directly because the circumstances are different. But you lose at Oregon, you lose at Penn State. Those are technically 2 better losses than Ohio State's 2 regular season losses last year,
Right.
and they were the 8th seed in the college football playoff. So, yeah, probably a little bit of brand bias there as far as the conversation, but I hope that's not the case. I think there was a little bit of redemption when it was Notre Dame versus Ohio State in the national championship game, right?
Yeah, the two teams we lost to.
The only 2 losses that Indiana had last year were the 2 teams playing for the national championship.
Yeah, well, and I think there was some redemption too. I mean, it's again, this is not the best way to look at things, but we played the first game in the college football playoff and didn't look great, but the final score wasn't awful. I mean, we were down by like 14. Like the final score was closer than the game was, no doubt about it. But it does feel like that was like, oh, Indiana got blown out. It's like we were never down by more than like 17. Like Boise State got blown out. Like other teams, like Tennessee goes in and gets their doors blown off. And it's like, I think that was a little bit of redemption where I think we still had the closest game in the first round against a team that went to the national title game. It's just the optics didn't look great. Similarly against Ohio State, it's like the optics just weren't awesome at the very end. So hopefully those things change this year, and hopefully we're able to keep up against, or the worst case scenario would be you lose to Oregon, you lose to Penn State, and like those games aren't close either. Then it's like, all right, maybe we still would get a really good bowl. And again, you're 10-2. It's like this is a slow process to build up to these levels. You're playing against teams that just have historical advantages that Indiana doesn't.
Right. And I'm sure as Indiana fans, it's easy to want to get greedy, which I totally understand. Like the expectation should be that you contend for the college football playoff this year. But if you do win 10 games and maybe you finish right outside, are you happy? Maybe not based on expectation, but also if you have back-to-back 10-win years, think about how far you've come in 2 years.
That's a great point. The other thing I've kind of looked at is like, I don't think for Indiana right now, making the college football playoff should be our goal for a season. I mean, it's just, that's a lofty goal for a program like Indiana. It happened last year, which was awesome. I look at, the way things could break this year is like, could you make the Big Ten title game? And I think that's a reality. We did this on one of our other pods, Crimson Cash, looking at the over-unders from a gambling perspective for every team in the season. But go look at all of the schedules, and this idea of, if Indiana loses at Oregon and loses at Penn State, which I'm not saying is going to happen, but those are both really tough places to play. Those are both really good teams this year. You're 10-2. I think there's a world where 2 losses get you into the Big Ten title game, depending on how things play out. Because it's like, you look at Ohio State, I think has to play Oregon. Like Oregon has to play Penn State. Like all of these teams have to play each other. Like no one's going clean. And if somebody goes clean, someone else has 1 or 2 losses. So like, I just think the way things break this year, it's very possible you're going to have a 2-loss team in the Big Ten title game.
Well, and that's when the Tony Petitti proposal for the 4 automatic bids for the Big Ten and the SEC, I think it's great for Indiana. Like that would be ideal for Indiana because of what we're talking about. The idea would be that you have 6 teams in the final regular season weekend playing for a chance to go to the big one, to the college football playoff, and that would eliminate what we're talking about because to finish in the top 6 this year, if you lose against Oregon and Penn State, at worst you're probably 6th. So you're still in that conversation under that proposal. So 2 losses at Oregon, at Penn State, and then that final weekend where it would be the traditional Big Ten championship game, and then the 3rd place team versus the 6th, the 4th versus the 5th for those 2 extra spots in the college football playoff. Indiana would be in that. So I think that's another chance also to prove, hey, we can go get a ranked win, because those are probably all top 25 games at that point in the season.
Before we talk about larger topics, exactly this, the Big Ten SEC stuff, I'm just curious, as you look at Indiana this year, what would, I don't need a win total or but just kind of at a, high level, what would you think is a successful season for Indiana this year?
I think going back to the college football playoff, that's a success.
Well, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. But to go from 3-9 2 years ago and then win 9-10 games this year, whether you're inside the bubble or outside the bubble, I think you can confidently say this feels like something that could be good for a while. And, I know that's kind of we were talking about the Illinois and Indiana kind of parallel narrative there, going from the 2020 season to the 2021 season. One thing that I feel more confident in with Indiana now compared to that time when, 2021, Michael Penix only played in 2 Big Ten games, gets hurt. The backup situation was a little bit murky. I mean, it was Jack Tuttle, Donovan McCulley, who later went to wide receiver, was playing quarterback. Grant Wilson's the backup this year, and I know he's coming off an injury, but he started 14 college games at Old Dominion. And it is harder now than it was then to have quality depth. But I do think there is a better insurance policy for Indiana at quarterback compared to when they went from the great 2020 season to that next season of expectation when Penix got hurt. And I don't say that to speak it into the world that Mendoza would get hurt, but just having that security blanket, it feels like Indiana's in a little bit better of a spot than they were if worst case scenario did happen.
Well, and that year also was another year of, I mean, that year they go 2-10. So it's like, you can't, like, that was just a team, but it's like, you couldn't have had a worse start. It's like, you're at Iowa, fine, it's a Big Ten game, you can't change that, but that's just, you just get throttled. And, what is kind of forgotten is they came back and they played Cincinnati that year really tough. And Cincinnati was, I think that year they went to the BCS, the 14 BCS. And again, this is the overscheduling thing, is like, you're playing a top 10 team at home, but it's like, make that an easy win. Like, get the team, you just got punched in the mouth at Iowa. Like, give yourself a couple games to grow back. Maybe that season goes differently, because they damn near beat Cincinnati. They didn't. They also damn near beat Michigan State that year, a team that Michigan State, that was Mel Tucker's first year, I think, and they were on a roll. Like, they won 9 in a row that time. And then after that, the wheels completely just fell off and the cart fell off. And it's like, maybe end up going still 4-8. And it's like, whatever. But again, it's like, that's a year where you have an overscheduling issue. You start, just get punched in the mouth 3 times to start the year. But that was like, again, you look at this year, you're going to be able to start 3-0 and kind of give yourself a nice lead in. Again, as a fan, I would love to see other games. I do, just as a fan of sports, I like to see teams, push themselves. But, back to this idea, it's like that 2021 season, part of it was also scheduling that didn't help that team.
Totally agree. Yeah, that Cincinnati team was nasty. That was Desmond Ridder and Sauce Gardner. Jerome Ford was the running back. I mean, Luke Fickell had it rolling there. So no, the schedule didn't help, but that's back to our point about the non-conference. Like, that's where you can kind of, I don't want to say ease your way in, because nothing's a gimme, but the schedule breaks a lot better where you don't play a Big Ten game until week 4 this year, compared to then you go right into it.
So I'll make you speak for the media. So Connor, you're now in charge of the entire media. You get to speak.
I'm the czar of the media.
You're the czar of the media. Yes, you're in charge. You get a lot of decisions. I'm just curious about this, because we've talked about this a lot kind of in the off season, just, how much of an old boys club college football is. And, you saw a lot of it from the media last year. And obviously it's a little bit SEC bias with ESPN, like they're pushing their team, which is fine, their teams. But I'm just curious, from a narrative perspective, and obviously I'm Indiana biased looking at it from this perspective, but it's like, you think it'd be a good story to have teams kind of change up the narrative and be like, oh, like, Indiana's building something sustainable. This is new. This is exciting. Like, this is fun and different. It feels sometimes like the narrative gets kind of pushed back. It's like, no. We want to talk about the established brands. Like, we want Penn State. We want Clemson. Like, we want Florida State back. Again, I'm not saying you are this, but why does it feel that way when, we're trying to kind of break through and become, one of the players? And like you said, if we win 9 games this year, it's going to feel like, all right, maybe we have evolved to becoming one of the top teams in the Big Ten. We're never going to be Ohio State or Michigan. But I'm just curious, why from a media perspective, wouldn't you want more stories and more players in that realm than just being like, no, we're going to focus on the same 12, 15 teams every single year?
I mean, I went to a group of 5 school, so I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
I went to Ball State, and It was at right. It was at a time where Northern Illinois came out of the MAC and went to the Orange Bowl,
Right.
and there was a lot of chatter at that point of they don't belong on the field with Florida State, and they ended up there ended up being a pretty noticeable talent gap in that game when it was Jordan Lynch and those guys against EJ Manuel and Florida State. But I'm totally with you. I think the reason for it, and I'm sure you've heard this in some form before, is it's ratings driven, it's clicks driven, and the fan bases that have had teams sustain their success for 10, 15 years, if not longer, are usually more engaged. And I think what Indiana's fan base proved last year is there is a thirst for football to be good, and that when football is good, it can look, feel, and sound like it does at basketball games. If not even create a little bit more of a craze with John Mellencamp coming to town and both pregame shows being there on back-to-back weekends. But I think that's part of it. There's there is money to be made from the big brands, but I do think it is good not just for the health of the sport, the interest of us as fans, but also there's also money to be made in this big business of college football when there is an Indiana or a Boise State or an SMU that crashes the party.
Yeah. No, it's going to be fun if we can be in that discussion again. It's going to blow the SEC's mind. Like, they're just, ESPN's going to go nuts. Like, and I'm sure they're going to find another metric. If there's, I keep saying, lose at Oregon, lose at Penn State, so I should stop the negative talk. But let's just say we beat Iowa and then we win one of the other games. Like, if you go through and like Indiana will again play a little, dream casting, but we're 3-0, we beat Illinois, we win at Iowa, and then we win at Oregon, which I think would be a really tough game. That's a really quick team. It's like, you win at Oregon, you are now you're 6-0. You come home, you beat Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, like you're 9-0. Like the minds of the SEC would be blown. Like they would not quite know how to handle this, and it'd be fun to see. And if we let's say we do that and then lose at Penn State, I'd love to see the metrics they start coming up with about non-conference or like whatever the SEC is better at. It's like I feel like that would then be the metric of what we need to compete with. And it's like, well, Alabama, but they started the season ranked higher. And even though they lost 2 games, like it would be a wild discussion point. But I'd love to see that.
Well, here's one that I know gets used now is Indiana's lost 14 straight against ranked teams, 14 straight games against ranked teams. So you beat Oregon, they're going to be ranked.
Right. Or you beat Illinois.
Unless something, Illinois will be ranked. Iowa, pretty good chance they're ranked. Oregon, likely a top 25 game as well. So if you win those 3 games, that's like boom, boom, boom.
Right.
You put that narrative to bed 3 weeks in a row. What else do you have to lean on? Plus, 2 of those games are on the road.
Yeah.
It's not 3 straight home games. So I think that would be a tough sell to try to dig something up to say Indiana's not legit if they win those 3 games in a row and start 6-0.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that helps us this year that we've talked about is, starting the season ranked is just a badge that it kind of is stupid because this is really all based off of nothing and just opinions and thoughts. And like, I could argue for an hour about why I actually think Indiana should be ranked ahead of Illinois, but it's like nobody knows. And part of this is narrative driven, but it becomes so important because you hear this stuff near the end of the year. It's like Ole Miss last year. It's like, well, they were started the season. They beat a couple teams that were ranked at the beginning of the year. It's like, that means nothing. It's like if they finish, like Indiana was ranked in 2021, they were ranked 16th that year or something, and they finished 2-10. It's like Florida State last year, I think, was ranked and they finished 2-10. It's like preseason rankings should not be a metric, but it ends up becoming a metric of like, well, that was a somewhat good team when you played them, even though it really doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm. But the good thing now is at least we get to play the games rather than, when we were coming up on the sport, it was a poll that decided who the national champion was. At least there is a little more head to head now. So I don't know. I'm pretty happy with where the sport is right now, and I know there's already expansion talk, but I was thrilled with how the first year of the 12-team playoff played out.
I agree. It was a lot of fun. you definitely saw the advantage of having home field. I mean, that was huge. That played out immensely, and you saw it with the results the next round when games were in bowl sites. I think to me, the main change that needs to happen, having been such a part of it as an Indiana fan, is the automatic bidding and the automatic seeding of the conference champions did not make a lot of sense. Like, Ohio State, and like they should have been just appalled at where they were seated. It didn't make a ton of sense. Like the fact that Arizona State and Boise State got buys, and like a lot of the stuff didn't make a lot of sense, and it felt like you should have just been like, all right, we're picking the top 12 teams, and that's how it should have been. But this goes to my kind of the last two questions I have is like this. It feels like the way that the current system is set up is to kind of appease the Big 12, to appease the ACC, to appease Notre Dame to a degree, where it's like, all right, you guys are still part of the process. And like, oh, Big 12, your champion comes in here in Mountain West. You guys can have a little taste. And it feels like we're now starting to get kind of the beginning salvos of a real war between the Big 10 and the SEC, where like the Big 10 is sniping at the SEC. It's like, if you guys want to play this, and it feels like we're getting to that point where also it's like we're kind of done worrying about the Big 12 and the ACC. And it's like, you guys, like, you're not part of this league. Like, you will get some kind of seat at the table, but it's not going to be the same seat as a Big 10 or an SEC school. I'm curious what your thoughts of kind of the initial wars, the 8-9 conference game thing, and just how you could see things playing out over the next couple of years. As to me, it looks like it's like two Death Stars, the Big 10 and the SEC, just being like, all right, we're going to reshape this and reshape it in a way that really benefits our conferences.
I will say I like some of the boldness of the Big 12, because with the proposal of four bids for the Big 10, 4 bids for the SEC, and 2 for the ACC and Big 12, the Big 12 hasn't really been on board with that publicly. Right. And last year, the Big 12 got 1 team in, but the idea and what Brent Yormark is trying to build in the Big 12 is, 9 teams every year on the final day of the regular season competing for the Big 12 championship. Maybe not that type of parity,
right?
But maybe we have 3 or 4 teams out of the Big 12 that are the new version of what Texas and Oklahoma were in the Big 12 for a while. Because I think it would have been easy to kind of cash in on that as the Big 12 after I'm sure they were sold on, hey, you only got 1 team in last year. We're guaranteeing you 2.
Right.
But they've basically said, no, like if we can get 3, which they would have a chance to under that system with a couple of bids still out there for non locked in bids for the conferences. But I kind of like that boldness from them to say, like, no, we're not going to play along with that, and we're going to we're going to go against that structure of just locking it in for essentially 2 teams every single year.
I agree with you. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get much of a say. It's kind of like, I'm just not sure they're going to have votes against the Big 10 and the SEC.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like, obviously the power has swayed in a big way to those 2 leagues. And I think the stuff that you and I and a lot of others are hearing publicly is just kind of the tip of the iceberg of what's going on beneath the surface as far as those battles. But
I kind of, in a similar vein, I like how the Big 10 is kind of taking the initiative here. Like, it seems like they're starting, like they realize where this is going, and they're kind of already starting the sniping at the SEC about their schedule. Because it's also, and you may know more about this than I do, but as an outsider looking at it, is like, you're kind of poking at the SEC in something they can't really solve, because right now they can't really add a 9th game because ESPN is their TV partner, and they could add it, but ESPN does want to pay for it. Like, I mean, thus far, ESPN hasn't really shown an interest. Like, we're cool with the setup. We don't really want to pay more. Whereas like the Big 10 is in a unique spot because the teams are partial owners of the Big 10 network. So it's like, if they decide to add another Big 10 game, they went to 10, which would be nuts, but they could. And it's like, they can kind of all agree on it and everybody makes money on it. Like, the SEC is not in a spot where they can just say, we're going to do 9 games. I mean, I guess they could, they just wouldn't get paid for it, which they want to. And so I kind of like the Big 10 kind of just picking at something where it's like the SEC can't really solve this problem until the next media negotiations. It's like the Big 10 is kind of, it's like in poker, like they have a bigger chip stack. It's like, we're just going to start pushing a little bit because I think the next evolution of the playoff is going to happen before the next TV contract comes up for the SEC. So like the Big Ten is using a little bit of that leverage. I as a Big Ten fan, I like that.
I agree. And I like the fact that, that TV window to renegotiate is up in 2030 for the Big Ten.
Right.
So you have a chance to make changes and kind of evaluate after 6 or 7 years of this current deal.
Right.
So yeah, I think the Big Ten is in really good hands too with Tony Petitti because he is a TV person at heart, and that was a brilliant move. So yeah, I think, obviously there's public strategy playing out, but I do think we are set up for some more movement here in the next 4 or 5 years that we've kind of been anticipating for the last 4 or 5 years. So it is kind of fun to project that. And I know from being on your show a little bit, you've been right about a lot of this stuff as it's played out over the last 4 or 5 years, which tip of the cap to you.
Thank you. No, it's fun. I mean, what I get you brought it up. I have one more question we'll get to, but like you brought this up. So it's I love the topic of I agree. It feels like we're going to 20-20. And that's not like I'm not breaking news. Everyone seems to think that.
Yep.
What I find really interesting is, if you go 20-20, there's a lot of teams that would be left out. And one of those could be Notre Dame. It's like, if let's just say you pick, like, we're going to go with Virginia, North Carolina, Clemson, and Florida State. Like, those are all really good options. Maybe not Virginia, but you could like NC State or, Missouri or Oklahoma State. Like there's a way you could get 4 more teams, 2 in the Big Ten, 2 in the SEC, that don't include Notre Dame. And I just look at that as really interesting because it feels like the leverage would change. It's like, all right, Notre Dame, like, we're done. Like 20-20 is a good number. Like, we're probably not going to go to 22-22. It's like, you get in on this round of the musical chairs or you're not going to get in. That said, I mean, a team they probably always make room for Notre Dame, but it does feel like things might get a little more permanent in the concrete when you get to 20-20. And it's not like there's more than 4 really good options as I view it.
Yeah. And Notre Dame, I think, will always have pretty big sway and pretty big power because of how many people watch their games, how many people are Notre Dame fans. And that was only reinforced by them going to the national championship game last year, because we could have maybe gotten to a point where you get further and further away from 1988 when they won the national championship. And maybe that fan base, that interest starts to dwindle a little bit. We were a long way away from that before last year, but I think the run that they went on reinforced that even further, that they will have long-term power.
Although I will say, I mean, their deal with NBC, it's awesome. It's good, but it's not like every Big Ten school gets like $60 million from the Big Ten network. I mean, I'm not sure they're pulling in that kind of money. And like it's like, okay, great. You're making 40 or 50 million. It's like Rutgers is making more than you. Like how you feel about that? You like that?
Yeah, no, I think that's all part of the consideration too. And I think something else to keep an eye on with the rights is that NBC has been very aggressive in acquiring sports rights over the last couple of years. They got the NBA, they're rumored to be in on Major League Baseball. So how does Notre Dame fit into that strategy long term, and how does that shape where people end up in the college football space?
Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting to see. So the last thing I wanted to we could talk big picture stuff all day long, but I'm with you. It feels like we're close to something happening. I'll end on this. It's like, I hope I hope the Big Ten makes the first move. Like, it was just nice to see them be a little not reactionary, but kind of push the ball forward, because it feels like they're both kind of at a stalemate waiting for the next one to make a move. And part of it is like the grant of rights, the ACC. So there's a lot of things going on, but it did feel like when the SEC got Texas and Oklahoma, it's like, oh, wow. And the Big Ten's like, well, we got to do something. Like and I think the moves the Big Ten made were perfect for the Big Ten, but it would be kind of nice to have the Big Ten put the SEC on their heels, because they could if they were just like, hey, we're grabbing Clemson and Notre Dame. Like, that would be seismic. It's like, then it's just like everyone's looking at the SEC. It's like, all right, what are you guys going to do?
Right. Yeah, I still remember that day a couple summers ago where I think it was an email or a text chain where it was like, hey, can't really say anything publicly, but there's going to be big news happening in the next 24 hours. Just want everybody to be ready for it. So like, as network employees, sometimes you get tipped off, but I feel like it's harder to do that now that we've gone through this first wave of, the 4 schools being added. So
yeah,
there'll have to be a more creative way internally to say, hey, something's up. Now anytime we hear something's up, we think, oh, more teams are joining the league.
So the biggest news that happened this offseason wasn't Mendoza, wasn't IU scheduling. It's that Indiana has a mascot now. So we now have Hoosier the Bison. The Bison is back. If you listen to our pod, Galen, my co-host, has always ended every show with bring back the Bison. They brought back the Bison. As a member of the media, like, I think it's funny, like, people around here and my friends have kind of been mostly positive. Some are like, why, stupid, like, why are you doing this? Like, why do you need a mascot? It's like, you go back and look, like, mascots are important. Like, they're in video games. Like, it becomes something, you can sell stuff, and it becomes something on the TV network where, like, you see the guy in the Buckeye hat, like, all the time. Like, they always go to the Nittany Lion. Like, I think it gives your university a face. And this is something like Galen had brought up before that I hadn't really thought of, is like, if you don't do it, then other people will do it for you. And there's some really interesting stuff from the 50s where it shows, like, people, drawing up all the Big Ten schools. And it's like, for Michigan, they draw a Wolverine. Like, for Ohio State, they draw the Buckeye guy. And for Indiana, it's like a really bad looking guy with like a hat, like a hay in his mouth. It's like, they'll make whatever they want so I look at it as a really good thing. And I'm really excited to see Hoosier unveiled and what it looks like. But I'm curious, as a impartial media member, what do you think of Indiana finally getting a mascot?
Having some friends that are not hardcore sports people, they always ask the mascot question of, like, what is a Hoosier? That sort of stuff. Especially when I was working at Southern Illinois, they're like, what's a Saluki? So I've had to explain mascots to non-sports friends before. And when the what's a Hoosier thing comes up, it's a person from Indiana. So it's Johnny from Jasper.
Right.
It's all encompassing. But yeah, this gives people more of a visual of, like, you can associate that with Indiana. And I thought that the Jeremy Gray and Sydney Parrish and everybody that did the videos this summer were excellent. IMDb credits for all. Well done.
They did a great job. It was a great reveal. We had Jeremy on our show talking about like the each one was pulled from a little movie that he likes. Like, it was a great reveal. And I mean, it's going to be fun that first game when we see Hoosier. I think the naming was also great too. Like, we talked to Jeremy. If you haven't listened to that pod, not you, but the audience, but you too, like, go back and listen. It was really interesting hearing them talk about, like, how do you name a mascot? Because it's like they went through all the ideas, and it's like, there's famous people through the university, but, like, how does that? It's just it's tough. And, like, Hoosier doesn't seem like a cop out, but it does kind of. It's like, it's a good answer, and it's like, that does make a lot of sense. Just name it Hoosier, and then that everyone knows what that is, and it makes sense.
Right. I mean, one of the biggest brands in college football is Alabama. They have the elephant, and it's like Crimson Tide with an elephant.
Right.
What's the connection? But with the Bison being named Hoosier, tying it back to the team name, I think is the perfect fit.
Well, no, like, doesn't Western Michigan have the big blob, like the red thing?
Western Kentucky.
Yeah. It's like but they get to use that. Like, they have it on the helmets, like, in the I play the EA NCAA college football game with my son, and, like, he loves the teams that have mascots and stuff. Like, it's something that I think is really good that Indiana put it in, and hopefully it's something that we see in the Big Ten title game this year, and we see Hoosier at the college football playoff. So both of those.
Boom. I mean, Texas has Bevo. Why not have Hoosier in the big game?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
and then
and
we'll
big
get you a Hoosier jacket. We'll do a bomber jacket with Hoosier on it. I'm sure it's coming. So
Perfect.
Well, Connor, hey man, have a great season this year. And let's check in at the end of the year. Hopefully we can talk about an Indiana Big Ten title game and or an Indiana college football playoff berth again.
Sounds great, Scott. Thanks as always for having me.
Of course, man. Anytime. Follow Connor on Big Ten Network. You're going to USC, right, in a couple weeks?
UCLA Utah is our first game.
Sorry. But you're going to USC in a couple weeks.
Yeah, so we've got our first 3 games, and I'm back with Mark Helfrich this year with Fox. First game, UCLA Utah, USC Georgia Southern's week 2, the return of Clay Helton to SC, and then because he's the head coach at Georgia Southern now, and then Penn State for week 3. So my first regular season game at Beaver Stadium. I'm excited for that.
Oh, have fun with that.
Yeah,
it's a whiteout. It's always a whiteout there. Right. Go to the get the ice cream, like the Paterno, or they don't call it anymore, the ice cream shop, but they have the ice cream there.
No, they still got the Paterno Peach. So
yeah. I don't know if they renamed it or not. So
no. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys in Bloomington at some point.
Hopefully you get an IU game. Like put in for one of them.
I'll ask. Ask.
All right. Well, hey, Connor, it's always a pleasure having you on, and want to thank everybody for listening. We'll continue ramping up for the preseason as we're like a week and a half away from the first game against Old Dominion. I want to thank everybody for listening. For Crimson Cast, this is Scott signing off.